Hello everyone, I'm Cory Mitchell with TradeThatSwing.com, and in this video we're going to look at the history of how Bitcoin acts when it gets to prior highs. So I have written about this before but haven't done a video on it. So we're going to look at basically the situation Bitcoin is in right now, because it's just attracted a lot of attention. The prior high was right around this 69,000 level. We got to it. We got a really quick pullback. We've gone up to close to 74,000 and then had about an 18% pullback. So I just want to look at when this situation has happened before, what's happened and how does the price ultimately resume. With that said, always trade your own system. We're going to be looking at historical examples of what's occurred in the past. That does not necessarily mean that what has happened in the past will happen this time. So always trade your own method, and everyone has different risk tolerances. We're going to talk about how much volatility generally happens around these highs. Everyone has different risk tolerances. Some might be fine holding through a 20 or 30% pullback. Others may not be. So you always want to trade your own system, but we are going to look at a little bit of history. So how I have this chart set up is using a zigzag, which just shows movements over a certain percentage. And I do this because I like to see the big bear markets coming out of 70% greater declines. We generally have big moves that follow. I have a whole load of statistics. If you go to TradeThatSwing.com, under investing, you can go to how Bitcoin moves, Bitcoin cycles, and I've basically broken down every rally, every pullback, every bear market, how the price has unfolded after those. Each rally, how it ended up unfolding, where it started to take off, those sorts of things. And then I also have this section, which we're going to cover in this video, which is how Bitcoin generally acts. So this was published right when we got up near that high, and we're basically seeing what was discussed play out so far. So that's how this is set up. And we have a couple other examples we can look at where the price went to a all-time high following one of these big bear markets. So we had a big bear market and then we've rallied back to the high. So that's the situation we're in. So we can look at prior examples where that happened. So let's go back to 2017. We got back up to the 2013 high, and you can see just months of volatility. This is a weekly chart. So got up here in January and didn't really break out until about April, May of that year. So several months of just whipping around. And if we measure these out, it got very close, then pulled back 34, 35%, made a new high, then pulled back 31, 32% before ultimately heading higher. Then we had the next major high, no big bear markets in here, made a huge new high up here in late 2017. We got the 70% pullbacks. This one didn't reclaim the high. We kept going lower. That was a pretty deep bear market. In total, about 83%. This one didn't get back to the prior high. Then we had another decline. So this was the first time in 2020 where we reclaimed that 2017 high after a major bear market. This one was a nice long duration, very deep. And once again, we saw about a month of, it got pretty close there. Then we have another week, then another week, then another week, and then another week until it eventually broke out. And if we measure this price area where it was just kind of whipping around, it was about 16%. So, touched it, pulls back, touched it, pulls back, and whipped around about in a 16% price range there. So not quite as volatile as this one, where it was about 30% range, but it's still, this volatility whipping around lasted about a month and saw the price, just kind of whipping up and down about 16%, and then it ultimately moved higher. After that breakout ran, can't see there. ran about another 200% to the upside. So this is a logarithmic chart. You can see it went from about just under 20,000 up to the 64,000 or so. This one kind of interest, but we didn't have a severe bear market in here. You can see there was no 70% decline. So this is a little bit different scenario. This was kind of a pullback. It was a deep one, I think about 40 or 50%. Yeah, 55%. So still a really deep pullback. And then when it got to that high again, it chopped around. So I'm not including this scenario because it doesn't quite fit the scenario we're in, where we're hitting an all-time high after a major long-term bear market. This was a small bear market and was quite quick in duration and in terms of depth. So it didn't really have time to build up like the current one we have. But even then, you can see it whipped around quite a bit. It covered an area of about 20% when it got back to that prior high. So this one, not really counting it, but still important. Or still noting the volatility around the high. So this one, we have a much longer, about a year of downside, then about a year of recovery back up to the high. So a nice long duration, big depth bear market. And we've come back to this high, and I have some just numbers written down here. Basically, it hit the high and pulled back 15%, like almost immediately. And then we pushed higher, got up to about close to 74,000, 73,700 or so. Each exchange will be slightly different, but around 73,700. And then we've pulled back 18% since then. And I just wanted to make this video to point out that this is actually quite normal. If you look at this, you look at this, you look at this, there is a precedent for this type of action. There was one example where this did not happen. It was back in, I believe, like 2013 or something. The chart I have up doesn't go back quite that far. Yeah, to 2013, Bitcoin made an all-time high, dropped more than 70%, then retested the all-time high later that year, and it just blew right through it without whipsawing. So again, that has occurred, but it didn't occur this time because we started getting the whipsaws right away. Like it touched and it fell 15% right away. So we are in more of this scenario. We're basically in about week 3 of this. So this could go on for another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where we're whipping around. Ultimately, the price has continued higher, but that does not necessarily mean that it will continue higher this time. But I did draw this little box just to kind of show the type of volatility we could be in for. So we have that high in there. So this box is about 20%. And I think that's, kind of an average. It could end up being a little bit bigger, a little bit more volatility. Maybe we take out this initial little drop here. So dropping in, below 60, I think would scare a lot of people. And that tends to happen in Bitcoin, where we just get these, actually all markets, where you get like a little bit move below a prior low and then start hitting higher again. So it's just a way to kind of view the market, be aware of if what we're seeing is something different or if we've kind of seen it before, and then you can plan out your trades accordingly. So I know there's lots of long-term holders, there's lots of swing traders, but hopefully just kind of seeing how this situation has played out in the past may help you decide how you're going to trade this in the future. Basically, I got some out, knowing that quite often we get some volatility there. So I had got some out right around here at 69,000. Felt like a bit of a dummy for a few minutes when it went up to 74. But ultimately, yeah, this choppiness occurs. So got some out right around 69,000, and maybe I might add some of that position back, kind of in this lower area, around 60,000-ish if it gets back there. And if it just runs higher from here, then maybe I pick up somewhere else. But it just helps me kind of plan out some of these longer term trades and help me see what history has done and if we're following a similar path now. So again, it's not a prediction on what will happen. It is simply what history has done, and I hope that helps you out in understanding the current market dynamic in Bitcoin.